If Zack Snyder can move on from the Snyderverse, so can we. Hey Internet, I'm Chris, and this is a place on the Internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. Before I dive into why we should move past the Snyderverse, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let's dive in. Recently, James Gunn blew a lot of people's minds by posting a photo of him and Zack Snyder smiling, being friends. Now, this would surprise people that don't pay attention to what James Gunn has said or to the careers of James Gunn and Zack Snyder. But if you have been paying attention, it is kind of like a cool, little reunion in some ways. Also, if you recognize the background, it is the place that James Gunn broke ground on his DCU story. So it led a lot of people speculating as to, is Zack Snyder joining the DCU? Now, I don't think that is happening, and if it did, it would probably be a crazier thing than them just taking a photo, and I think it would probably give a lot of goodwill to those fans who feel slighted by Warner Brothers because of the end of the Snyderverse. But I think we are at a place where I think we should probably let it go.
The bat is dead. Bury it.
And not in the sense that, hey, if you're a big Zack Snyder fan, if you're a fan of the DCEU, that you should stop liking those things or stop talking about those things. But I think we are in a place where, hey, it is time to embrace something new like James Gunn's DCU. Now, does that mean that if you did not like the Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy, you should be all in on James Gunn's new vision for what DC should look like in film, TV, games, and possibly comics? Not necessarily. But I do think it is time to stop thinking that Warner Brothers is going to magically wake up one day and be like, you know what? That billion-dollar franchise we thought we had that failed in so many different ways, mostly because of our own doing, we're going to go back and pour more money into that and give Zack Snyder the keys again. That is definitely not happening. Now, is it possible that Warner Brothers would hire Zack Snyder again? For sure. It's a completely different regime. Zack is a visionary filmmaker as long as you keep him away from the typewriter, as I like to say, just because I've loved most things that he's done where he hasn't written it. I am not a big fan of Army of the Dead, or I tried watching Rebel Moon Part 1. I just couldn't get through it. I heard the director's cut is much better, so maybe I'll give that a try one day. But I think Zack, when he's done things like 300 or Watchmen or Dawn of the Dead, which was written by James Gunn, fantastic filmmaker. And even with the DC movies, I think when his ideas were filtered through people like Christopher Nolan and David Goyer, you had some really interesting ideas. And honestly, all those movies are probably some of the best looking superhero movies you'll ever see. There's nothing that could touch them in my eyes. So I think he definitely left a mark on the iconography of superhero films, and obviously a mark on all of us. I think the Snyder Cut is such a fantastic achievement in terms of the fact that it exists, and also the fact that it's good, something that was radically different than what we saw in the theatrical cut. It's insane that Warner Brothers went with that Joss Whedon sort of cobbled together version of the film. But Zack was able to deliver that despite sort of going through what he had to go through with his daughter's death, and obviously with the treatment he got from Warner Brothers. He was able to dive in, use the money they gave him, and really pour in his own resources, even shooting things in his own backyard, to really give fans something unique. And I think that is something we should celebrate. If you are a fan of Zack Snyder, that was the win, getting the Snyder Cut. And I know sometimes you give certain people an inch, they want to take a mile, and you want to support Zack, but I think supporting Zack really means is supporting him in his other ventures. It's insane. Netflix gave him the keys to 2 different franchises and gave him a lot of money and creative control to create Army of the Dead. And then also you had Rebel Moon, you had 2 movies, you've had comic books. Army of the Dead had a spin-off heist movie, which was weird. I didn't watch it, but it's crazy that he got that. And then also, even with the DC stuff, despite not delivering on what Warner Brothers thought was the surefire hit with Man of Steel, BVS, those things did not perform financially the way they wanted to. They still gave them a ton of money to create what is some of the most radical experimental comic book films you could think of. Those movies, however you feel about them, are insane that they exist. And especially the Snyder Cut, a 4-hour movie that just really swings for the fences in a lot of ways. And I'm glad it exists, and I love it, especially Justice League. Man of Steel, BVS, the Ultimate Cut, like it's one of those movies I have to admit, like there's days where I love it, and then there's days I'm like, some of this is just too stupid to really love. But again, like I think that really speaks to art, like when you're able to watch something again and again, even if you're not necessarily like, I love this, like it's something that I always revisit, and I'm talking about it right now, like 8 years later, whatever it's been, like it's insane that we're still having a conversation about it. So why am I saying move on from it? Despite me talking about this and sort of giving Zack all of his flowers, I just think it's unhealthy to be so attached to something where you feel like you have to tear down someone else. I think James has been very accommodating, and despite sort of getting a lot of hate and sort of a lot of real personal attacks, because he is viewed as someone that should have been Zack's spot. Like he is getting all the resources, all the attention, all the creative control that Zack should have got, which is completely fair. Like, hey, like whenever you see someone mistreated in a certain way, especially if you admire them and you see someone else getting better treatment, it's like, why didn't they treat Zack that way? Which again is completely fair, but you should not feel that like you should attack James, especially someone that has openly talked about the fact that they went to Zack to ask him about the Superman trunks. They collaborated very early in both of their careers with Dawn of the Dead, and it's clear they're friends. Like, who knows what they talk about? Do they talk about like, hey, maybe you come back? And I think if we sort of get to a place where we have a healthier relationship with the Snyderverse and we're not constantly trying to tear other things down, maybe, just maybe, DC Studios will feel that, hey, maybe we revisit the Snyderverse in animation or maybe comic book form, Elseworlds, something to kind of give that they know there's an appetite and a fan base for it that they could really give fans for. And I like I said, that picture was really cool. I think James, I've never seen that man smile the way he did in that photo, and Zack looks healthy, and I think they both knew what they were doing when they were taking that photo and obviously posting it. And I think it's something that is gonna do well when Superman comes out, and I'm glad to see James sort of really reaching out and letting fans know that, hey, this new DC universe is for everyone. It's not for a particular set of fans. We're not trying to say screw you to the fans that supported DC through all that turmoil all those years. We're not saying screw you to the Snyder fans. We're giving you something new. We're giving you something completely different. But hey, like, we respect what Zack did. We want to treat him right and make sure he's good. Like I said, Zack has moved on. He's done a lot of creative stuff. He's got more movies coming. He's done a lot of work, and again has had a lot of success outside of that DC realm, and has gotten a lot of real latitude as a filmmaker. He's been able to explore things that have been ideas in his mind, and to me, some of them haven't worked out, but hey, there's nothing better as a creative to be able to explore your own worlds, as cool as it was to see what he did in the DCEU and crafting that world. Like, it's always cool to see a creator make something that's a little bit more theirs, where they can have their own stamp on it, versus like something at Marvel and DC. Like, I think it's much more fulfilling to see someone create their own franchise, like a Rebel Moon or an Army of the Dead. And I think hopefully you get to see Zack back at DC in some capacity. He's always kept the door open in terms of like making fun of even his own takes, appearing in Teen Titans Go, or even, you know, hanging out with James Gunn. So maybe one day we'll see him maybe direct The Authority with someone else writing, hopefully. Let's, like Zack, move on, prepare for something new. Now, what do you think? Are you someone that's like, hey, the only reason I was into any DC stuff was Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse. Now that that's over, I'm done? Or are you excited for the DCU and the new possibilities that brings? Let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.